is a continent of great opportunities.
You've got to come to Africa to make money.
Returns on investment in most African countries can be better than 30%.
Africa is going to be the key to the future of economic growth globally.
After years of dormancy, the African economy is filled with a new buoyancy and dynamism, outperforming almost every other region of the world.
Africa is outstripping even the OECD countries with an average growth rate of 5%, when the US is down to 2.5%.
African countries were growing at better than 5% before this financial crisis of 2007-2008. And this really hit them hard, and growth rates fell back down to 1%. But guess what? They have rebounded very strongly, and they're resuming the growth trajectory they had before.
The continent has also consistently outperformed every other region of the world when it comes to returns on investment.
In Africa, you've got the highest rates of return on investment anywhere in the world. The discrepancy between Africa's return on investment is 8%. The global average is 3%.
It's kind of the flip of what we saw in Asia 10, 20 years ago, where these small countries became these big markets. We're seeing that throughout Africa now, that these small markets are becoming huge demand markets for us. So I think the potential for Africa to grow at a rate that hasn't been seen in a number of decades globally is there for us.
The recent report by McKinsey, entitled Lions on the Move, reveals the scale and scope of Africa's strong economic performance.
Empirical evidence is emerging at the hand of crucial works like the McKinsey report, like Emerging Africa, the book by Stephen Radlett. The latest is the JP Morgan report on the African economy as a whole. And that tells not an emotional story about Africa, it tells a story in statistics and numbers.
And the statistics and numbers from the McKinsey report show that in 2008, Africa had a combined consumer spending of over $800 billion. It saw cell phone subscribers jump to 500 million in 2010 from under 200 million in 2000. The continent has also posted combined GDP of $1.6 trillion, more than India, whose population is slightly larger than all of Africa.
There's good examples out there. You start with South Africa, then you move up to Nigeria and Ghana on the western part. I think you'll have a Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia marketplace on the far east side. But then you have the smaller markets that are doing fairly well, the Rwandas of the world and the Mauritiuses.
Mali in 2010 have seen his economic grow by 5.6%. But this is a global figure. In the agriculture sector, the growth was 16%.
Over the last 5 years, we've had a significant increase in the growth rate of Liberia, economic growth rate from 4.6 in 2009 to 6.2 in 2010.
Angola has over the last decade posted growth rate of 10% per annum. Zambia is not far behind.
The economic growth is getting to about 7%. That's very high. Consider that just under 10 years, over 10 years ago, it was about almost 0.9 point something. Now it's plus 7.
There are also perennial stellar performers like Botswana, which for more than 30 years posted sustained growth rate of 9% year after year after year, performing better than any other country in the world.
I think Botswana should be a shining example for a lot of the other African nations to see how you can succeed, and succeed not just for investment, but succeed for your people as well.
Morocco, with proximity to European markets, has a long record of growth.
We have a free trade agreement with 1 billion people, meaning that anything you produce in Morocco can be sold duty-free to the United States, Europe, which are the biggest markets in the world, and Turkey and other 4 Arab countries, and Africa. So it's a good hub.
And then there's South Africa, which in 2010 hosted one of the most successful soccer World Cup tournaments ever, and in the process knocked down many misconceptions.
They did not expect to find in Africa 24/7 banking connectivity. They found it when they came for the World Cup. They did not expect 24/7 fast-speed broadband connectivity. They found it when they came for the World Cup. They did not expect a level of hospitality infrastructure where the hotels that they lived in are sometimes better than the ones you can find in New York. They found it in South Africa. They did not expect a transport connectivity where you could be anywhere from one airport to the next within 2 hours without either a pat down or a scan that shows your nakedness. So those are the things that they found in South Africa, and it has begun to change the mindset.
An economic powerhouse, South Africa is one of only 4 countries selected to produce the Mercedes-Benz C-Class, and is home to many pioneering companies, including Sasol, which leads the world in converting coal to fuel. Walmart, in a move to establish a foothold in Africa, recently launched a successful $4.5 billion bid to purchase a 51% stake in Mesmart, a giant South African store chain, and other companies are following suit.
General Electric is coming to the party in terms of 100 locomotives to get things going.
Africa's strong economic performance is the result of reforms instituted across the continent.
You recall that Rwanda was named the best reformer globally by the World Bank's Doing Business Index.
We have also adopted a number of measures, economic measures, economic reforms that put Cape Verde as one of the top 10 reformers in the world.
These reforms have created a liberal investment climate.
We have a reform that allowed us to create and register a business in less than 1 hour.
Today, we have a one-stop shop where you can start a business within 3 days.
The time an investor comes in, if he or she has got all papers, he or she can start his or her business within 21 days.
If you go to Sierra Leone, we have the enabling environment, number 1, to protect your investment, number 2, to repatriate whatever profits that you are making.
We have a legislation that permits you to have 5 years tax-free holidays, that permits you that you can export your revenues.
Reforms have also taken on the corruption issue. Transparency International, the international corruption watchdog based in Berlin, reports that over the last several years, many African countries, including Botswana, Rwanda, and Cape Verde, have performed better when it comes to corruption than European Union countries like Italy, Greece, and Hungary, and better than other countries like China, India, and Brazil.
Transparency and accountability are very important if we want really to invest and to have others investing in our country, because no one will invest in a country that has records of corruption.
Africa's economic reform policies have also been accompanied by political liberalization across the continent.
The AU has now re-emphasized democracy, human rights, rule of law. All this will create a conducive atmosphere for for economic development and economic integration.
Together, these reforms have created a perfect storm, quickening the continent's economic pulse, imbuing country after country with a new vibrancy, and creating an economically significant and sizable middle class.
The largest and fastest growing middle class in the world is in Africa. 300 million people in Africa are moving to the cities. They are increasingly educated, they are earning salaries, and they want to buy goods.
This middle class is in turn creating demand for retail and consumer goods. This, combined with the continent's pent-up demand for infrastructure and energy, is opening up a vast array of investment opportunities, in addition to the traditional extractive and commodities sectors.
And we have potential in terms of wind energy, solar energy, geothermal energy, and the waves, and also biomass energy.
There's a huge opportunity in the leather industry. There's also a huge opportunity in the jewelry industry with the diamonds or with other stones which are not so explored.
Nigeria has quite a number of resources that are yet untapped. We have cocoa, we have granite, we have palm oil, we have tin, we have gold. There's more to Nigeria than oil. Please come, help us to diversify the base of our economy. Let's focus on agriculture.
You know, there's potential for investment in agriculture, not the old traditional way of doing agriculture, you know, but, you know, trying to help our farmers first to use improved technology in a much more concerted way so that they can have greater output that can assure their own food security.
Africa has 60% of the world's arable land, so that instead of receiving food aid from the world in future, Africa will be the guarantor of food security for the world because we have uncontaminated land.
I think we should also think of non-traditional sectors. Nollywood is there, it's employing hundreds of young people.
There's a huge opportunity in the fashion and modeling.
The performance of African countries over the last decade, though impressive by any measure, does not obscure the fact that much needs to be done to alleviate poverty and tackle a range of development challenges. Increasingly, as Africa's economic performance demonstrates, the best way to solve these problems is through investment and trade that benefits both Africa and investors.
Africa has many desperate needs, but Africa no longer needs to simply beg for what it wants. And the proposition we are making to the US investors is very simply, we need you, but you also need us. If you want to pull the American economy out of recession, you've got to export. You've got to send that to Africa. And our story is really one in which we are presenting them for the first time with a win-win situation rather than a call to save us. And that's the crucial difference in the call for investments.
We're bullish on Africa. We see it as the last true growth market out there. And if we're late to the game now, we're going to be late forever. So we're doing everything in our power to make sure that the business community in the United States understands the market potential of Africa.
You've got to come to Africa to make money.
It is clear that while the world will continue to see and talk about newly emerging economies in India, China, and the so-called Asian tigers, the economic lions of Africa have begun to stir, and their collective roar will be heard for decades to come.